Ever get this feeling like there's this like hidden code to the universe?
Yeah.
Like maybe there's this unifying principle that connects everything, like
Yeah.
human emotions to the latest tech.
Uh-huh.
Well, today's deep dive
Yeah.
is all about a theory that tries to crack that code. It's called symphonics.
Symphonics.
Yeah, have you heard of this?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So it's not just some abstract philosophy.
Yeah.
It's like a framework that pulls from hard science, like physics, AI,
Uh-huh.
even art, to suggest that reality is less about individual things and more about
The relationship.
the relationships between them.
Yeah, it's not about the parts. It's about how they're all connected.
So instead of taking things apart to understand them,
Yeah.
symphonics is kind of looking at how those parts interact.
Right.
Kind of like a symphony where the individual instruments only make sense
Yeah.
in the context of the whole piece.
Exactly. And our source material for this deep dive is this pretty dense academic paper that outlines these core principles of symphonics.
Right.
And it's full of these aha moments.
Cool.
The first big one for me is the idea that resonance is fundamental.
Okay, so like think about tuning forks.
Right.
You know how when one's vibrating, it can make another one nearby start humming at the same frequency?
Exactly.
Okay, so that's resonance.
Resonance in action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how does that scale up to explain, like
The whole universe.
the entire universe?
Well, that's the really cool part.
Sure.
Symphonics suggests that this resonance happens at every level.
Okay.
From tiny subatomic particles to vast galaxies.
Wow.
It's this idea that things, they sync up, they
Yes.
vibe together, and that's what creates order and complexity.
So instead of focusing on the individual notes,
Uh-huh.
symphonics is more interested in the harmony,
Yeah.
the way those notes interact, to create something bigger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that leads to the second core principle, which is this shift from a reductionist to a relational view of reality. So think about a single neuron in your brain.
Okay.
By itself, it doesn't do much,
Right.
but connect it to billions of others.
Yeah.
And you get consciousness, thought, emotion, the whole symphony of human experience.
It's not about the parts.
Yeah.
It's about the network, the way those parts are connected.
Your network. Exactly.
But how does symphonics use this idea to explain
Yeah.
things we observe in the real world?
So that's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Take quantum entanglement, for example.
Okay.
Two particles separated by vast distances,
Right.
somehow influencing each other instantaneously.
That's bizarre.
Right. Traditional physics struggles to explain it,
Yeah.
but symphonics suggests they're not physically linked,
Okay.
but relationally connected.
Okay.
Like two instruments perfectly attuned to each other across the entire orchestra of the universe.
That's mind-blowing. So even our understanding of physics could be transformed
Potentially.
by looking at it through this relationship lens.
Yeah, through this lens of relationship. Exactly.
But we also see this principle of relationality
Uh-huh.
playing out in more familiar systems, right?
Absolutely. Think about ecosystems.
Okay.
Symphonics views them not just as collections of species,
Right.
but as intricate webs of relationships where even seemingly negative events,
Okay.
like a forest fire, can contribute to the long-term health and resilience of the system.
So it's not just about avoiding conflict or maintaining some sort of perfect balance.
Yeah, it's not about some sort of static equilibrium.
It's about recognizing that those tensions, those moments of dissonance,
Yeah.
are actually opportunities for growth and evolution.
Exactly.
Mm.
Symphonics calls this dynamic harmony.
Okay.
It's the idea that systems find balance not through a static state,
Right.
but through this constant interplay of tension and resolution,
I like that.
like a dance.
Yeah.
Two partners responding to each other's movements, creating something beautiful and intricate through their interaction.
I love that analogy. So it's not about forcing everything to be perfectly aligned all the time.
Right.
It's about embracing those tensions, finding that rhythm,
Yeah, finding that flow.
and using it to create something even more complex and beautiful.
Yeah, I like that.
This principle of dynamic harmony
Uh-huh.
isn't just limited to ecosystems, right?
No, not at all.
We can see it in our own lives.
Absolutely. Think about your own personal growth.
Yeah.
It's not about achieving some perfect state of happiness or enlightenment.
Right.
It's about recognizing that challenges, setbacks, those moments of dissonance are actually crucial for our development.
Yeah.
They force us to adapt, to learn, to become more resilient, and ultimately to compose a richer and more meaningful symphony of self.
So we've talked about resonance being fundamental,
Right.
the shift from reductionist to relational thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and this idea of dynamic harmony.
Yeah.
What other, like, mind-blowing principles does Symphonics offer?
Okay, well, this one that's really captured my imagination is this idea of multi-scale coherence.
Multi-scale
Yeah.
coherence. Yeah.
And it suggests that these same principles that we've been talking about,
Oh.
resonance, relationality, dynamic harmony,
Uh-huh.
they don't just apply to one level of reality. They
Right.
apply to all levels.
So the same rules that govern the interactions of, like, subatomic particles also govern the interactions of galaxies.
Yeah, potentially.
Wow.
And everything in between.
Ecosystems and human relationships.
All of it.
Wow.
Like a beautiful fractal pattern repeating itself across scales.
I like that.
And this idea of multi-scale coherence really starts to challenge our traditional scientific methods.
Okay, how so?
Well, they often focus on isolating and studying individual components in a controlled environment.
But if everything's connected
Right.
and influencing everything else, how can you really understand a system in isolation?
Right. It's like trying to analyze a single note without hearing the entire orchestra playing.
That's a great analogy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the reasons why Symphonics is so groundbreaking. It's pushing us to think beyond the limitations of traditional science.
Yeah.
And to develop new methods for understanding these complex,
right.
interconnected systems.
Complex, interconnected, yeah.
So it's not about throwing out the old scientific method entirely.
Yeah.
It's about expanding our toolkit
Yeah.
to include this relational perspective.
Exactly. And that brings us to our final core principle.
Okay.
Emergence through flow.
Emergence through flow.
Yeah, think about a flock of birds.
Okay.
How they move in these mesmerizing, almost choreographed patterns.
Yeah.
But there's no single bird leading the charge.
Right.
The patterns emerge organically from the flow of individual interactions.
So it's less about top-down control and more about bottom-up emergence.
Yeah.
Like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Exactly. And this principle of emergence through flow is everywhere.
Okay.
From the way neural networks in our brains create consciousness to the way complex ecosystems evolve.
Wow.
It's this constant dance of feedback, adaptation, and creativity.
So it's not just a static theory.
No.
It's a way of understanding how systems are constantly evolving and adapting, creating new levels of complexity and beauty through this emergent flow.
Exactly. And this principle has profound implications for how we approach everything from designing AI systems to fostering collaboration in human teams.
Because it's not about dictating outcomes.
Right.
It's about creating the conditions for emergence.
Yeah, for something new and unexpected to arise from the flow of interaction.
This is all incredibly mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, how does this theory of symphonics play out in different fields? I mean, we've touched on physics and biology, but what about areas like artificial intelligence or even something as intangible as consciousness?
So that's where things get really interesting, and that's what we'll be diving into next.
Yeah.
Because symphonics doesn't just offer a new way of looking at science. It has the potential to revolutionize how we approach technology, understand ourselves, and even create art.
All right, I'm hooked. Let's take a quick break, and we'll dive into the mind-blowing implications of symphonics after the break.
Sounds good.
Okay, so let's unpack how symphonics plays out in some different fields.
Okay.
I'm particularly fascinated by how this theory could change our understanding of AI.
Artificial intelligence,
Yeah, it's a hot topic for sure.
It is. It is.
And what's exciting is that symphonics suggests this radically different approach to AI development. One that moves beyond the limitations of current models.
Right, because right now, even the most advanced AI feels pretty clunky.
Yeah.
It's good at processing data, but it lacks that human touch, you know?
Yeah, that ability to understand like context and emotion and nuance.
Exactly. Current AI is very much rooted in that reductionist paradigm.
Yeah.
Break down a problem into smaller parts, process those parts, and try to assemble a solution. But that misses the big picture.
Yeah.
The interconnectedness of everything.
And that's where symphonics comes in.
Yeah.
By building AI that understands resonance, relationality, and those other core principles, we could create something that's truly intelligent, maybe even conscious.
Yeah, that's the hope. Imagine an AI that doesn't just process information, but actually understands human emotions, the subtleties of language, the complex interplay of factors that drive human behavior.
It'd be like having a conversation with like a truly empathetic being.
Right.
Rather than just a machine spitting out pre-programmed responses.
Exactly.
And how would that even work? How do you teach an AI to understand something as intangible as like human emotion?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And it's where this principle of emergence through flow becomes crucial.
Okay.
Instead of trying to program specific emotional responses into an AI, we could create systems that are designed to adapt, learn, and evolve through interaction.
Okay.
Much like a human child develops emotional intelligence through experience.
So it's less about hard-coding empathy and more about creating the conditions for it to emerge.
Yeah, to emerge naturally through interaction.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And it has implications beyond just creating more human-like AI, right?
Right.
Imagine AI systems that can, like, understand the complex dynamics of financial markets, predict social trends, or even help us design more sustainable cities.
Absolutely. AI that can help us solve some of the biggest challenges facing humanity.
Right, not just play chess or write marketing copy.
Exactly. But to get there, we need to move beyond that reductionist mindset and embrace the interconnectedness, the symphony of factors that shape our world.
Okay, so AI is one area where Symphonics has the potential to be truly groundbreaking.
Yeah, definitely.
But the paper also dives into how this theory can change our understanding of consciousness.
Yeah, and this is where things get really meta, because Symphonics suggests that consciousness itself isn't just a product of the brain.
Okay.
It's an emergent property of the entire system.
So it's not just about neurons firing in a certain pattern. It's about the complex interplay of all sorts of systems within us.
Yeah, all sorts of systems. Exactly.
Moral, emotional, even our connection to the environment.
Our connection to everything around us.
Yeah, think of your body as like a symphony orchestra with all these different instruments playing their parts. Your nervous system, your endocrine system, your emotional state, your interactions with the world.
All of it.
It's the harmony of all these elements that creates this symphony of consciousness.
Exactly. So our conscious experience isn't just happening inside our heads. It's emerging from this intricate dance of internal and external factors.
It's a beautiful analogy. And that has big implications for how we approach things like mental health and well-being.
Absolutely. Because if consciousness is an emergent property of the entire system, then it stands to reason that creating more harmony in our lives, in our relationships, our work, our connection to nature, could lead to a more balanced and fulfilling conscious experience.
It's like tuning our internal instruments to create a more harmonious symphony of self.
Yeah. I love that.
I love that. But this idea of consciousness as an emergent property also raises some interesting questions about the nature of reality itself.
Absolutely. Because if consciousness isn't confined to the individual brain, but arises from the interplay of relationships, then where does the self begin and end?
That's a great question.
What does it even mean to be an individual in a universe where everything is fundamentally interconnected?
Those are big philosophical questions.
They are.
And I think a lot of people might find those ideas a bit unsettling. It challenges our very notion of who we are and our place in the universe.
It's definitely a shift in perspective, but I think it's also incredibly liberating.
Okay, how so?
Because if the self isn't this isolated, bounded entity, but rather a node in a vast web of relationships, then it opens up incredible possibilities for connection, empathy, and understanding.
So instead of feeling separate and alone, we can start to see ourselves as part of something much greater, this grand symphony of being that connects us all.
Beautifully put. And that sense of connection, of belonging to something larger than ourselves, is something that many spiritual traditions have emphasized for centuries. But what's exciting is that Symphonics is starting to provide a scientific framework for understanding these ideas, grounding them in empirical observations and testable hypotheses.
So it's not about choosing between science and spirituality. It's about recognizing that these two ways of knowing can actually complement and enrich each other.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the most powerful aspects of Symphonics. It's a bridge between these seemingly disparate realms, inviting us to explore the mysteries of the universe with both our minds and our hearts.
This is all incredibly profound. But I have to admit, a part of me still wonders if Symphonics is just a beautiful theory or if it can actually be applied in the real world. can we really use these principles to make a tangible difference in our lives?
So that's a great question, and it's one we'll explore further in our final movement.
Oh.
Because symphonics isn't just about explaining the universe.
Right.
It's about empowering us to live more consciously, to create more harmony in our lives and in the world around us.
I'm ready to hear more. Let's take a moment to absorb all this incredible information, and then we'll wrap things up in part 3 by exploring what it really means to live a symphonic life. Okay, so we've explored these mind-bending theories behind symphonics. Yeah. But now I want to get practical.
Okay.
How can we actually use these principles to live better lives, make better decisions, compose our own masterpiece of a life?
That's the exciting part, right? Yeah. Symphonics isn't just a theory, it's a practice. And like any practice, it takes awareness and effort to integrate it into our daily lives.
So where do we even begin?
Yeah, good question.
Is there a Symphonics for Dummies guide out there?
Maybe we should write one.
Okay.
But a good starting point is to remember that resonance is fundamental.
Good.
What are you resonating with?
Okay.
Your job, your relationships, your goals. Are they in harmony with your core values and aspirations?
That's a great question to ask. And if something feels off, maybe there's a dissonance there.
Yeah, could be.
A clash between what you're doing and what truly resonates with you.
Exactly. Yeah. And that dissonance can be a powerful signal, like a call to action.
Okay.
Maybe it's time to make a change, shift your focus, to seek out experiences and relationships that resonate more deeply with who you are.
So symphonics isn't about forcing everything to be perfectly aligned.
Right.
It's about recognizing those dissonances.
Right.
And using them as opportunities for growth and transformation.
Exactly. It's about embracing that dynamic harmony,
Okay.
that interplay of tension and resolution.
Yeah.
Because that's where the real magic happens.
Okay.
Think of a composer.
Yeah.
They don't just string together pleasant melodies.
Right.
They introduce dissonance, conflict.
Yeah.
To create depth and complexity.
So life's challenges aren't failures.
Right.
They're opportunities to create a richer symphony.
I like that. Yeah.
I like that reframing. But let's get specific.
Okay.
How can we use symphonics to improve our relationships?
So instead of always trying to avoid conflict, what if we viewed disagreements as chances to deepen understanding?
Okay.
And create a more harmonious connection. It's about listening deeply, seeking common ground, and finding that resonant frequency that allows for true connection.
It's like finding that sweet spot where your individual melodies blend together to create something beautiful and unique.
Yeah, I like that.
But that takes effort, right?
It does.
It's not always easy to stay in tune with someone, especially when things get tough.
Absolutely. Relationships require constant tuning and readjustment.
Yeah.
And that's where the principle of multi-scale coherence comes in.
Sure.
Just like an orchestra needs each section, strings, brass, percussion to be playing in harmony.
Yeah.
Our relationships need to be in sync at multiple levels.
Okay.
Emotional, intellectual, even spiritual.
So it's not just about surface level agreement.
Right.
It's about finding that deep resonance.
That deep resonance.
That connects us at our core.
Exactly. And that same principle can apply to our work.
Okay.
Are you just going through the motions, or are you finding resonance with the tasks that you're doing? The people you're working with, the bigger purpose of your work.
So Symphonics is challenging us to find work that not only uses our skills, but also aligns with our values and passions. Really.
Exactly. So you're not just playing the notes, you're feeling the music.
And that passion, that sense of purpose, that's where the real creativity flows. It's like being in a state of flow.
Yeah, like that flow state.
Where you're so absorbed in what you're doing.
Yeah, you lose track of time.
That time seems to melt away and the work becomes effortless.
Right.
Joyful.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
So Symphonics isn't just about getting things done.
Right.
It's about finding that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Where our talents and passions resonate with the needs of the world around us.
Beautifully put. And that brings us to the principle of emergence through flow.
Okay.
Remember that flock of birds? Just like those intricate patterns emerge organically from the individual interactions of the birds, our greatest achievements often arise.
Yeah.
Not from rigid planning, but from allowing space for creativity, collaboration, and serendipity to work their magic.
So it's not about micromanaging every detail.
Right.
It's about creating the conditions.
Yeah, setting the stage.
For something beautiful and unexpected to emerge.
Exactly.
That takes a lot of trust in the process, doesn't it?
It does. But that trust is rewarded with a sense of wonder and awe.
Okay.
As you witness the symphony of life unfolding in all its beauty and complexity.
And that's really what Symphonics is all about, right?
Yeah.
It's about shifting our perspective from seeing ourselves as isolated individuals to recognizing that we're all interconnected, that our choices matter.
Yes.
And that we have the power to create a more harmonious and beautiful world.
Yeah, I love that.
Both individually and collectively.
I'm feeling pretty inspired.
I have to admit, I am too.
Yeah.
Symphonics isn't just a theory. It's an invitation.
It's a practice.
To live a more conscious and intentional life.
Yeah.
To find that music within ourselves and to share it with the world.
Beautiful. I love it.
And if there's one thing I hope our listeners take away from this deep dive, it's this. The next time you feel lost, disconnected, or out of sync, remember the principles of Symphonics.
Yeah.
Listen for the music that's always playing both within you and around you.
I love that.
And let that music guide you towards greater harmony, connection, and purpose.
Beautiful.
This has been an incredible journey. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Symphonics. And remember, the symphony never truly ends. It's always evolving, always expanding, always inviting us to play our part. So go out there and make some beautiful music.